Okay, this is the video for 3.101 Rational Expressions. This is the Period 1 version that was given out on Friday and is due on Wednesday. The Period 2 version is going to be different than, Period 3 version rather, is going to be different than this, so this will not be exactly the Period 3 assignment. So be sure you are in Period 1 if you're doing this. Okay, so a rational expression is simply an expression of either numbers or polynomials that can be expressed as a over b. Okay, it can be expressed like a fraction. So that's called a rational expression. That's all a rational expression is. You don't need to know anything more about that. All right, so this is just an extension, a little bit of an extension of what you did with the polynomials unit, the last unit. So what we've got to do is factor things and then cancel things that can be canceled. So you're simplifying this in effect. By the way, the term expression, you notice there's no equal sign anywhere here. That's called an expression. When there's an equal sign, it's set equal to something else. It's called an equation, and that's what we'll do in the next lesson. Okay, so the way you deal with this is you basically factor this, and see what cancels. And it's not really necessary to do what I'm about to do here, but I label it 1 and 2 just to get you in the habit of doing that. So this is 1, this is 2. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to factor out number 1. So just copy it over. Okay, and hopefully you're developing some skill. Hopefully you're developing some skill in factoring these. You want to find the largest number that'll go into both of these. The first thing to do, if you're not sure, is just get out a calculator and divide 54 by 9 and see if it goes in evenly. And if it does, then that means that 9 will go into both of these numbers. And it does go in. It goes in 6 times. So 9, you can factor a 9 out of both of these. Now, what about this? You got x to the third and x squared. I think most of you are kind of catching on that what they both have in common is an x squared. There's x times x times x, and there's x times x. So they both have x times x in common. That's x squared. So we can pull out a 9 and an x squared. And then you just have to work backwards. What do you multiply this by? What do you multiply this by to get 9x to the third? Well, you need another x. So 9x squared times x is 9x to the third. And then over here, you already have the x squared, so you just have to multiply this by 6. 9x squared times negative 6 gives you negative 54x squared. Okay, so that's completely factored right there. Now we come to number 2. If you want, you can draw a line between them. And we factor this. Okay, and there's that. And the grand product is this times this, okay? Draw that little line, it'll help you to remember it. You need to get the grand product. So the grand product is 30, so what do we want to do with that? We want to find two numbers that multiply to the grand product, which is 30. So 1 times 30 is 30, so that's what you want. Now you want to add to get this number right here, which is negative 11. Okay, so if they both multiply to a positive number, they either both have to be positive or both be negative. Since they add to a negative number, they must both be negative. So we just start a sequence and work our way down until we find the two numbers. If you can do this in your head, that's fine. Do it in your head. But if you need a methodical way to figure these two numbers out, do it this way. So it's negative 1 times negative 30 is going to give you positive 30. Negative 1 plus negative 30 equals negative 31. Okay, that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for negative 11. Negative 2 times negative 15. Negative 2 minus 15, or plus negative 15 if you want to call it that, is going to equal negative 17, and that's no good. We need negative 11. Negative 3 times negative 10 gives you positive 30. All of these have to multiply to be positive 30. And negative 3 minus 10 equals negative 13. We're getting close, but we're not there. That's not negative 11. Okay, 4. 4 doesn't go into 30. 5 does. Negative 5 times negative 6, that equals positive 30. Negative 5 minus 6 equals negative 11, and that's what we're looking for. So these are the two numbers we're looking for. So our polynomial then is going to be this. I can fit it in down here. It's x minus 5 times x minus 6. Okay, so that is equal to this, and this is equal to that. So now we put them on top of each other, put them back together, as this is the Humpty Dumpty, putting Humpty Dumpty back together again. So it's 9x squared, x minus 6 over this down here. Okay, now before we cancel anything, we have to determine excluded values. Values that this equation cannot take on. You have to do this before you cancel. And that's anything that will turn the denominator into 0. So to turn this denominator into 0, either this becomes 0 or this becomes 0. So we've done this quite a few times before. How do we get this expression to become 0? You would put a 5 there. 5 minus 5 would be 0. So one of the excluded values is 5. What about the other one? What would make this expression go to 0? If you put a 6 there, 6 minus 6 would be 0. You cannot have 0 in the denominator, so that's 6. So those are the excluded values. You can't use those values in this equation, or it's an illegal fraction. Okay, so now that we've done that, we can cancel. So we see both top and bottom have x minus 6 right there. And so that's as much as we can cancel. There's nothing else that will cancel. So this is our final answer. That's as simplified as we can make this. Notice if we had canceled these first and then looked for excluded values, the only one we would have found is 5, this one. Okay, so that's why you have to look for the excluded values before you do the cancellations, all right? And there they are. Okay, let's keep going. These problems are going to be kind of long, okay? So buckle your seatbelts here. Some of these will be kind of long. Okay, what we need to do here is we need to get a common denominator. Anytime you're going to add two numbers, which is what this problem is doing, it's adding, you've got to have the bottom be the same. So what we're going to do is just use crossing arrows like this. All right, so we got to bring r minus 4 over here on the top and on the bottom. Now you're wondering, is that legal? Well, r minus 4 over r minus 4 is simply 1. And 1 times anything is itself, is that thing. So 5r over 2r plus 4 times 1 is equal to 5r over 2r plus 4. Okay, so yes, that is legal. You can multiply this by 1 and it still equals its same value. But what we've done now is we've started to put a common denominator together here. Now we're going to bring 2r plus 4 over and do the same thing over here. You got to do both top and bottom. And so you'll see now we have a common denominator. This is the same as this. So the denominator is common, okay? So what you're going to do now is you're going to bring, you're going to multiply out, expand out these up here, So this is going to be 5r, okay, times r minus 4. I just switched the places of these two. That's okay because it's a multiplication right there. Okay, plus 5r times 2r plus 4. And that's all going to be over the common denominator, so we only have to write it once now. It's r minus 4 times, it's this over here or over here, either one, but now you just have to write it once. Okay, so there you go there. Okay, so now what we can do is we can multiply through. Here we have 5r squared. 5r times negative 4 is negative 20r. And over here we have 5r times 2r is going to be 10r squared. And 5r times 4 is plus 20r. Okay, and again, it's all over what we have down here on the bottom. Okay, now we can simplify. 5r squared plus 10r squared is 15r squared. And negative 20r plus 20r just goes away. It's not there anymore. And then our denominator is what it is. Nothing's changed about that since we made it common. Okay, so this is what we have. And you may ask, should you leave the bottom like this or should you expand it out? And the answer is yes. In other words, it could be either one. What we need to do is have it in this form to find the excluded values. So the excluded value here, what's going to make this go to 0? It's 4. 4 minus 4 would be 0. So one of the excluded values is 4. Now what about this one? This one's a little trickier. You just come over here and you say 2r plus 4 equals 0. What does r have to be to make that 0? So you just do a little algebra. You subtract 4 from both sides. This cancels. You end up with 2r equals negative 4. You divide both sides by 2. And you'll end up right here with, cancel those, with negative 2. r equals negative 2. So you put a negative 2 in there, you get negative 2 times 2 is negative 4 plus 4 is 0. So it's going to be 4 and negative 2. Those are the excluded values right there. All right. If you wanted to expand this out, you could get this answer. R times, that would be the 15r squared on the top is not going to change. But you could FOIL this out. You get 2r squared. Then you got r times 4 is 4r. And negative 4 times 2r is negative 8r. So 4r minus 8r is negative 4r. Again, don't try to do that in your head if that's not, you're not comfortable. Just write it down off because they got plenty of space here. Okay, and then negative 4 times 4 is negative 16. And now what you can do further to this is you can factor out a 2. So I'm gonna come over here and do that where I have this empty space. So this is a way you could write that. If you do this, if you decide to expand this, you should factor out the 2 before you call it a final answer. Okay? But notice it's really hard to find what the excluded values are like this. This is how you factor it and then you find the excluded values. Okay, so I'm going to factor this 2 out. That's it. So it's 2 times r squared minus 2r minus 8. Okay, so this is an acceptable answer. This is an acceptable answer. This really isn't because you need to factor the 2 out if you're going to put it in this form. All right, that's it. And there are your excluded values. Okay? All right, let's keep going on this. Okay, so now we're getting into some that okay, so what we're going to do now, go on to number 3. And okay, we have a couple of denominators. We need to cross them, so let's go ahead and do that. And again, they both go on top and bottom. So up here we have, and over here we have this. Okay, so our denominators are the same, both sides, here and here. All right, so let's go ahead and expand all of this out, or multiply all of this through, and then what we can do is combine like terms and add things up there in the numerator. So let's go ahead and do that. So we got 4x. Again, do this in the way you feel comfortable. Don't try to do it in your head. I'm doing it in my head kind of quickly, but I'll explain what I'm doing. 4x times x is 4x squared. 4x times negative 6 is negative 24. And negative 4 times x is negative 4. So negative 24x minus 4x is negative 28x. Again, go off to the side and do that if you need to. Don't try to do it the way I did it if you're not comfortable. And then negative 4 times negative 6 is 24. So again, what I did was, I did first 4x times x is 4x squared. Outer, 4x times negative 6 is negative 24. And inner, negative 4 times x is negative 4x. So negative 24x minus 4x gets you to negative 28. Remember, the outer and the inner steps are always going to add together. And then the last step is negative 4 times negative 6 is plus 24. Now let's do this over here. 4x squared times x. Now, you got to be careful. There's a negative sign here. So it's good to put parentheses around that. So I'm going to get rid of the parentheses as I do this. Negative 4x squared times x is negative 4x to the third. There's the negative sign. And 4x squared times x is 4x to the third. Now watch out. This negative negative is going to become a positive. So 4x squared times 3 is 12. And the negative negative makes it positive 12, plus 12. And that's x squared. Okay, and then our common denominator can come down here. Okay, and you might ask, should I multiply those at this point or not? Maybe, just go ahead. Let's hold off. Let's see how the top works out. You want to try to see if things will cancel out. So let's see how this works out. So we have 4x squared. First of all, we have negative 4x to the third. Okay, first thing I see actually is this. I can factor a 4 out of all of these, right? 4 goes into all of these. So let's do that first. So I'm going to take a 4 out here, and then everything else is going to go into parentheses. So this is x squared. This is, if you take a 4 out of 28, you get negative 7x. If you take a 4 out of 24, you get plus 6. If you take a 4 out of negative 4x to the third, you get negative x to the third. And then you take a 4 out of this 12, you get a plus 3x squared. Okay, and I'm going to just go ahead and combine the terms. I won't put this underneath quite yet because let's just go ahead and simplify it a little further on the numerator. So we're doing the numerator here, okay? So down here, I'm going to have negative x to the third. So you want to put it in standard form with the highest exponent first. And then I've got x squared plus 3x squared is plus 4x squared. What you can do is just kind of lightly do that as you use them. Then I have negative 7x plus 6. And all outside of all that is this 4 that we factored out. Okay, so now underneath, I'm going to go ahead and put this down here. That's 4x squared times 4x minus 4. Well, very simply, one thing I can see cancels is this 4 and this 4. They cancel right away. Okay? After that, I don't see much else that cancels. Okay, and I don't see anything else that really cancels, but what I do see is I have a 4 in here that can factor out. What you want to do is totally factor everything that you can. So I can actually bring that 4 out here. That's different than this 4. Okay, I canceled these two 4s. Now this pulls a 4 out here. So the way I can write my final answer very simply is and that should have been an x right there, 7x. Maybe you caught that. Plus 6. And that's all going to be over 4x squared. And then when I factored this 4 out, I factored it out. That became, I should have shown you that. That became x minus 1. Okay, so 4 times x minus 1 would give you 4x minus 4. That canceled those and made that a 1. So that's going to be x minus 1. All right? And that's the answer. Now, what are your excluded values? Well, it's going to be a 0 here. If you put a 0 in there, that'll turn the whole bottom to 0. Or if you put a 1 there, 1 minus 1, that'll bring it to 0. So excluded values are 0 and 1. Okay, now I'm approaching 30 minutes. I don't like videos to go over 30 for a variety of reasons. It can produce complications in editing it and producing it. So I'm going to go ahead. The last 3 problems I'll do on a separate video, and they'll be up pretty soon. Okay, so we'll see you on the next video.